That's what you're supposed to see. Yep. So if I put in real GDP in the search here, right, and real GDP, real gross domestic product, and we use 10 years, there is the actual real GDP, what happened at real GDP. That's the level, right? And then if I go and we do units, we do percent change from a year ago, right? That's what I asked. That's the way I asked you to do it, right?
Yep.
So there are different ways you could do this. So yes, so what's one of the so there's a reason for having, while doing these exercises might seem tedious, and at some level that's sort of maybe right. In the past,
they're working out my brain.
no, some, but what all of you in the class should try to think about when you're doing things and you think, well, like this is just busy work, Dr. Simpkins, whether you're thinking that or whether you're actually in my presence and saying that, you should think like, well, is it or isn't it? And I can tell you that everything in this class has a purpose. It's been thought about and there's a purpose. So let me just tell you the purpose with this. So what we're gonna be talking about when we get in chapter 6, the next chapter, chapter 6 is hooked to chapter 3, which is the start of our model. We're going to talk about economic growth. In production function, chapter 3, talking about real GDP. What causes real GDP to grow over time? What are the factors that matter for that? And so what we're going to actually talk about is, well, so it's important to understand, like, well, how fast does real GDP grow in the economy, in the US economy? You should have a notion about that. Well, it wasn't growing more than 5%, right? Over this last 10 years, you know, somewhere between 0 and 5%, right? So maybe around 2 to 3%, sometimes lower, right? Sometimes higher. So I'm looking around, I thought somebody would come in the office. And then yes, there's this big drop, negative, right? Negative growth. Gray recession, right? It's a recession. So that's what these gray bars mean. There's the recessions. And then yes, the growth rate has picked up and now it has slowed down. So this data is the data that you see in the tables that you were asked to look at, right? In the homework.
Yeah.
So this is the same data, right? It comes from the Bureau of Economic Analysis. Boom, right here, right? And so, but Fred is a really nice, useful tool because it draws the graph for you, and you can make it shorter, longer, whatever. And you're gonna, next week, you'll be asked to create a dashboard in Fred to keep track of things like GDP, inflation rate, blah, 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 6, 8 different things that you're gonna keep track of for the rest of the semester. But you don't have to keep track of them. Like, it automatically updates when new data comes out. Like, it just automatically updates. And so it's going to be important for us to compare what's happening in the real economy with the model that we're developing. And then that's going to ultimately lead to this macro briefing report at the end of the semester. So it's important. And that's why the Wall Street Journal, that when the new data comes out, there's an article about that every week. Every week there's some new data that comes out, new report, new economic report that comes out about a different part of the economy. So it's like a puzzle, it's like a mosaic, right? And all the different indicators together create a picture of the economy. This is just one part of it, but real GDP is an important part of it. So yes, it goes down, and we had this really fast rebound from from COVID recession, right? Boom, really fast, like that's really fast growth, like over 10% for that quarter, right? That's crazy, right? Because that's nothing like any of this back here. Right, and now it's coming back down. Now, if you, there's another part of this question, right? The Fred part goes back to that Bureau of Economic Analysis table that I asked you about in the first part, nominal real GDP, right? From the Bureau of Economic Analysis from question 1. Well, what we know in the news is that there's been negative growth the last 2 quarters. That's usually the sign of a recession. So the big news in the paper all the time, the big news in that companies are wondering about, are we in a recession or not? Well, not according to this. And so question asked, like, why does this show positive growth? Whereas if we measure it in a different way, it shows negative growth. So that's a different question. But yes, so I want to say, it was pretty steady, right? Steady growth,
And
positive growth over most of that time until COVID comes, right? Boom. And we had this really rapid growth, right? Boom, boom, really rapid growth. And but that wasn't going to be sustained. But that's things opening up in the economy again, right? Those are lockdowns going away, etc. Right? And people going out, spending more money, going out to eat, blah blah blah, right? All those things are part of GDP, right? Part of consumption, part of C, part of consumption, right? Government spending going up, all those things. Yep.
So so that happens, and then in order to get the average annual growth rate, don't you just like divide like
so right, yes, go ahead, keep going.
Divide the 2019 quarter 4 by the 2012 quarter 2.
Well, wait a minute, say it again.
You divide the 2019 value, like 2019 value over 2012 value.
How do you calculate average? Econ 206.
Okay, usually you calculate.
First week of Econ 206.
I thought that you usually calculate average by like adding the two values and then dividing it by 2. But
what if you have 5 people, you have 5 people in your sample. One weighs 150 pounds, another one weighs 180 pounds, another one weighs 130 pounds.
You would add up the weights and then divide it by 5.
There you go.
Okay.
There you go.
I don't know why I thought it was
so what does it ask you to do, right? You can download the data.
Yeah.
Right, into an Excel
spreadsheet. You don't even really need to download the data because you can click on each one.
Well, no, but that's a pain. You can use a formula in Excel.
I just did it.
You can just use average in Excel. Boom. One click. One thing. That's fine. You can do it that way. You can use a calculator. You can whatever. Learn to use the tools you got. That's the point. So these are all part of the point of this homework. Get you familiar with the data. Understand where data comes from. That these reports come out. It gets reported quarterly or monthly. That you can use Excel. You can use Fred. Fred is a really useful tool. Like this homework does a lot of different things. All right.
Compare the behavior of real GDP from this graph with your answer to question 1B4.
There you go.
So 1B4. Okay, so for 1B4. Okay, so what happened to the value of real GDP over the past 4 quarters? Explain why. Yeah. I put that like it had grown.
So you don't have to have a question mark at the end of that. Okay. So let's go back with Fred. This shows growth rates, right? Now let's go back and just show it, not percent change, but just the actual data, right? So what happened here? Well, what's going on here? You're looking at the screen?
It's decreasing.
Which is negative growth.
Okay.
The question, the reason for asking this question, what's in the news all the time, and what companies are trying to figure out, are we in a recession?
Yeah.
Or not? Because 2 successive quarters of decline in real GDP That's a rule of thumb for the start of a recession. But nobody's, the group that actually makes this decision, called the Business Cycle Dating Group, National Bureau of Economic Research, they haven't actually said that yet, because it's not clear that we are. But the point is this, so this shows negative growth, right? It's declining. But that other graph shows positive growth. You have to think through that one.
Okay.
You have to think through that one a little bit. So I'm not going to answer that one directly right now.
Okay.
But that's the question. Like, why? The hint is that it's asking the question in different ways in those two questions. So if you look quarter to quarter, that's what this graph is showing, right? Each quarter of the year. Whereas the other one is showing what? Not quarter to quarter, but from the percent change from a year ago.
Yeah.
And now you have to think through that and tell me why that's different. But that's the basis of the answer.
Okay. Okay, yeah. I think I could get some ideas from that.
And you can see it, you can see it here actually, right? So if this is Q2 in 2022, if we go back to Q2 in 2021, it's down here, right? Is it higher out here? Yes. Than here? Yes. Right? So that the other question that when we're showing growth rates from a year ago, it's comparing this number to that number. When we're showing this, it's comparing this number to that number, that number to that number. That's the difference. So when you hear something in the news or see something in the news, you need to understand, how is that being measured? How are they measuring the growth rate? Is it quarter to quarter, or is it compared to, say, a year ago? Because they do it both ways sometimes. And it makes a big difference. This is an example where it makes a big difference. One is negative, one's positive.
Okay. Let me see.
I'll just make a comment here generally on this on 1A, when it says what percentage of nominal GDP is each one of these things, and like, well, that's just okay, that's just busy work. No, because what you're going to find out, this is, I'm not, you can do the calculation, but we're going to find out is C turns out to be the biggest thing. Well, as in terms of the biggest chunk of GDP, but we know that from chapter 2 already, from the table in chapter 2. Like, you see that, like, this is just the most recent data. Stuff in chapter 2 is from a year or two ago when the book was published, right? But why is it important? Because things that change taxes, or so what it means is things that affect consumers, or consumers get concerned about jobs and don't spend as much, that's what's going to affect GDP. Consumers drive the economy.
Yeah, consumers drive the economy, and consumption does that. So
which is why the government during COVID sent stimulus checks to people, because they didn't send checks to companies for gross private domestic investment buying machines. They sent it to households. Because why? Because they're 2/3 of the economy. And if they start spending more, the whole economy is going to turn. It's like big tanker ship, right? They're the engine that drives the tanker ship.
Right.
So when the Federal Reserve changes interest rates, when the government changes taxes, when the change that affects who? It affects consumers.
And
macroeconomic policy affects consumers. Why? Because it's 2/3 of the economy. Yeah. So so this homework is going to be different than probably any of the others, in the sense of like these calculations or these graphs and this data. Like, the other ones aren't going to be like this, but this is kind of like, this is a foundation for everything. That's the point of this homework.
Yeah, I think it's really helping me to understand I just have to like remember all the like different equations and stuff. That can get a little confusing, but it's fine.
Yeah.
So back to 4,
Mhm.
when we calculated, or when I calculated the real GDP and it was negative, like instead of being
Real
like,
GDP wasn't negative, the growth rate is negative.
not the, I meant the growth rate. Yeah. When the growth rate was negative, that means like it would be the opposite,
That means this. Right?
which would be on our way towards
This is
like
what's actually happening. But this is not the example, but this is what's actually happening in the US economy.
yeah. So
That's
that's
what it
like,
means. That's what that means. Real GDP is declining, negative, it'll be a negative growth rate in that case, right? And right, if it's getting smaller, it's going down. That means that's a negative growth rate. And that if that's what you find in there, well, that's what that means. Yeah.
okay. Okay. Then
Right.
actually,
Just like,
I think
or here, we'll take the extreme example, right? You see, in 2020, first part of 2020, right? COVID hits in March 2020 in the US, right? The
mhm.
economy was actually starting to go down before that, as you see here, the fourth quarter of 2019, actually. So it's not clear whether it would have started to slow already, but certainly, right? Big drop, big negative growth rate, right? Boom, right? Due to COVID and lockdown, you know? And so big recession, big recession. That's what that gray, right? That's what the gray bar means, recession in Fred graphs, right?
Okay. Oh, wait, you said that's a great recession. Okay. Why wouldn't that be considered a depression? Because I thought whilst we're going down, it's like a recession and then it turned, or is the depression like
Depression,
something extreme?
yeah, that's correct. Or depression,
Okay, like
a
it's
real,
really,
really extreme recession.
yeah, like everybody is fighting for their lives.
1930s, 25% unemployment rate, 20% unemployment rate. Yeah. Bread lines.
Okay. Then
Yeah.
I think I understand this, Dr. Simpkins. Like I feel like I texted you and I'm not texted you. I emailed you and I was actually like so stressed. And then like I took a second to read it and then I remembered our conversation from last class and I was just like writing it. I was like calculating the real GDP. I was even like helping Faith for a second in here. So I'm happy.
Yeah.
Keep doing the work, staying on track.
Yep.
I'm not gonna lie, it is really hard for me to do the real world stuff. Like just trying to like fit that into my schedule, but I'm gonna do it because it's important. But yeah, I don't want to keep you on for too long. I also have to get some things done.
Yeah.
I really need to be in person in your office hours.
Yeah.
I'd like to do that.
Yeah. You can come. You can come. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
I'm gonna work on that. Oh, next
I'm probably gonna
semester will
change, I probably will change one set of these office hours to in the evening. I think a couple people have emailed about that.
I'm
People
usually busy in
people in
the
our online program who are working full time during the day, and so I will probably. And I thought about that before the semester, but I thought we'll get started and see how this works. And but I will probably change one of these. I'm still trying to determine when I want exactly how I want to do that. But
I'm personally enjoying it during the day because like I'm really trying to set boundaries on when I get my work done.
yeah, yeah,
But yeah, I know that's not it can't be the same for everyone else.
right.
But yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for your help.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, don't over. So my comment to everybody is don't overthink it. Now you have to think deeply, but you don't have to sometimes you don't have to overthink it. People sometimes overthink things, and yeah. On this homework, you don't overthink it. Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, yeah.
Talk to you later.
All right, all right, all right.
Bye.